Ingrid, here we are, Life at ADP, the podcast, still here in season 3. And I have to tell you, this season has just been so great being able to sit down with, associates who we've had the pleasure to meet in person or virtually. And today is absolutely no different. We have 2 of our associates, one joining us from Barcelona, Spain, and the other from Staines, UK. Would you like to introduce our guest today?
You know, every time I get to sit down with you and with more of our associates, I get super excited. It is definitely one of my favorite things to do. And let's bring them here and have them introduce themselves. So let's start with Guadalupe.
Thanks, Ingrid. Hi, Kate. I am Guadalupe, but I go by Guada, so that will make our life easier today in the podcast, and hopefully it's shorter. I am the head of inclusion and talent for the international business in ADP, meaning, mainly EMEA, APAC, and LATAM regions. And I'm super excited to be here today with you.
Hello, everyone. So, my name's James. I look after business process improvements. So effectively, I look for opportunities to help make our clients and our associates' lives easier by enabling them to effectively do more, but by doing less, if that makes sense. And I'm just as excited as everyone else to be here today. It's a real privilege. So really looking forward to kind of talking about this topic.
Great. It is so excellent having you both joining us today. And as we've mentioned before, I'm in Georgia, Ingrid's in California. So we are really spanning the globe during this call, which really speaks to ADP being a global company. So, we wanted to have you both sit down with Ingrid and I to talk about global diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging at ADP. One of the things that we've talked about on the side prior to this podcast that really kind of infused this discussion is the whole concept of bringing your whole self to work. What does that actually mean from both of your perspectives? And Guada, if you don't mind, we started with you in the intros. James, can we start with you and then we'll pass it over to Guada?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you have been in situations where you haven't brought your whole self to work, I think when you get opportunities like this, it makes you reflect on, well, how am I bringing myself to work? How am I bringing my whole self? And am I actually bringing my whole self? And one of the things that I realized being quite reflective just before doing this podcast was I actually think I do bring my whole self to work. And I think through being able to feel comfortable to do that, it's actually given me a wider berth of opportunities and a wider network of people across the whole of the ADP kind of family, the ADP globe, to have opportunities where I can be passionate about things that I want to talk about, whether it's things around pride, which I'm a member of. I'm a member of the LGBTQIA plus community, but that doesn't define who I am. So for me, when I think about how do I bring my whole self to work, it's because I know that I come to work and I'm recognized for the value that I bring to my role and to ADP. I wholeheartedly feel part of the conversation. I, again, feel like I've got a platform to talk about the stuff that I'm passionate about. But I think most importantly, when I come to work, I feel 100% James. And I'm not embarrassed about that or ashamed about that. And I'm not scared about that as well. So I know that I feel that I have a seat at the table, effectively.
Thanks, James, for that, because I totally relate to what you're saying. And I would mention 2 things, one more personal and one that I just experienced actually this morning of what bringing your whole self means to work. In my case, I'm from Argentina. I came 11 years ago. I was looking for, an international experience in Barcelona. And I found it in a company that, in one office, just in one office, had more than 30 nationalities. And I felt that was important back then, and it's so important today as well. But also, as I progressed through my career in ADP, I also felt like different stages of my life where I was so happy to be in a company where, I didn't need to hide anything or, kind of not just hide, but maybe, have even second thoughts of whether I wanted to share a situation or not. For example, when I became pregnant for the first time, and I wanted to continue pursuing another step in my career, and being 39 weeks pregnant, I actually applied to a job. And, just having that opportunity of, being able to be open about what I want and not feeling restricted at any sort of dimension of my personality really made me a more engaged associate and a more engaged leader, and also helping the team that I lead and other people that I mentor to feel the same. So I think, it's that my personal experience is really that journey of really don't even have to second guess what you need to say, how you need to act. And also from a leader perspective, this morning I was just sitting in an event that was organized by the Pride Business Resource Group. And I was just so thrilled to see our associates and leaders talk so openly in the middle of the day, right, about their experience as parents of someone trans, as a parent of someone gay, and just, having in the audience a lot of allies and people that really want to lean in, and they're really willing to do everything that they can to make everyone feel that they can bring their whole self, not just you, right, but how you connect with others. So I just, for me, bringing your whole self to work is actually what actually makes me go back at night and feel not just engaged to come back the next day to work, but also kind of inspiring and actually willing to continue working with this environment.
Guada and James, thank you for sharing that. And one of our teammates, actually, Guada, has a very similar story to yours. She had applied for her role on our team when she was pretty far along in her pregnancy, but no one had known. And she was worried about, will this affect my chance for, growth within my role, and how will the perception of me be, and all of this. And, many years later, she's doing just fine. So I think that that's probably a very common story that we don't often hear about. So thank you for sharing. And James, I'd love to give you the opportunity. Do you have any sort of experiences where you weren't able to bring your whole self to work? And if so, are you comfortable to share that with the group?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the key ones in my life and my journey with work that really sticks out was, I remember working for a company where I had been in a relationship for a long time, for 8 years. And we got to a point in this relationship where we decided that we just wanted different things out of life. To this day, we're the best of friends still. But it was a really kind of traumatic event that happened in our lives. And I remember having to go to the work the next day. And I'd worked for this company for a good 2 years. And what I'd realized is that I never felt comfortable to come out at work. So I remember going to work the next day feeling absolutely heartbroken. My heart was in bits. And I had to take my manager into the room to just effectively explain why I was just constantly crying and upset. But I remember the fear that I had of having to first come out to my manager. And I felt like I'd been lying to the whole of work. And what I'd really started to notice was that I was never fully really engaged with conversations. So I'd shy away from conversations around what I did at the weekend, or what I was watching on television, or where I was going on holiday. Just these kind of innocuous, inane type of conversations that everyone was having. Because to me, to have those conversations, I had to expose that I was gay and I was in a relationship. But on retrospect, when I became more comfortable with leading a single life, one thing that I really learned from that moment was that I was effectively ashamed of my life. That's what I felt like. I was ashamed of this person who was really important in my life and who was, so instrumental to the decisions and the happiness and the joy that I was experiencing in life. And I kind of vowed at that point to really ensure that I was never in that situation again, that if I had people in my life, whether that was friends or whether it was places that I went to, that kind of gave me the inclination that, you know, I was part of the LGBTQIA plus community, I would be proud of that. And I would use it as a platform to engage in conversations. And I just suddenly started to feel myself being not included as such, but I wanted to be included and I wanted to join in conversations and I wanted to be part of the banter at work because I felt I wasn't played in anything anymore. And I soon became to realize that actually people weren't going to define me as, you know, James, who is gay. You know, people were just defining me as James, who was a manager and who led this particular team in this service centre and who added value to work, pretty much like I said before. And I think sometimes we can be our own worst enemy, because I think we go through life growing up feeling ashamed or feeling, you know, that there's going to be repercussions of exposing of who we are due to, you know, experiences that we've had in the past. That sometimes we stop ourselves from really opening up and exposing who we are and actually realizing, like I have at ADP, that I can actually use this to an advantage for so many people and start creating the ripples across the pond of building a community of other people who need support, who may not be as far along in their journey as I am, you know, and really kind of use that platform to an advantage rather than feeling like I've got to hide that away.
Thank you, first of all, for sharing your story with us and all of our listeners. Super inspiring. And, you know, we're really glad that you were able to have that moment, although coming from sadness and deep reflection, to say, you know, never again will I hide this part of who I am. And, you know, part of what you were sharing, and Guada, part of what you were sharing is the act of masking. And, you know, that's something that creates just, a snowball effect of many different consequences, I guess, for lack of a better word. You know, when you're masking part of who you are out of self-protection and preservation, you know, that leads to greater burnout, that leads to constant fatigue, brain fog, all of these things, including not allowing access to who you really are at the core. So I'm so happy to hear that both of you have come to a place where, regardless of what it is that makes you unique, you know, that you're comfortable with who the heck you are. And we're happy to have you. And we're happy to know you for who you are.
James, thank you so much for sharing your experience, your perspective, and how you were able to, you know, make something positive out of something maybe not so positive. And, you know, it's always good to hear those perspectives. So I want to ask Guada, and then we'll go to you, James. But let's talk more about what are those initiatives or those projects that maybe outside of the U.S. ADP is doing in order to continue making our culture inclusive and safe for all of our associates.
Yes, happy to provide some inputs. Well, you know, it connects starting with our vision. In ADP, we want our associate population to reflect all the global communities where we operate and the clients that we serve. And if you think about that, you mentioned, Ingrid, an inclusive culture. And just one example to bring this to life, this vision to life, is what we've done with our inclusive language guides. You could think that you are inclusive because you build a guide. But when you're truly inclusive and you're bringing the global perspective, do we really have one language? Do we really have one culture? Or even if you think of the English-speaking countries, is English the same in every single English-speaking country? It's not, right? So if you're truly meaning that, then it means, okay, I'm going to have a guide where I start with, and then each of the ADP locations actually took that guide and made that their own, right? Like they said, oh, in this particular location, in this particular language, this is what inclusion means. So you can give guidance and you can give, pillars of what everyone needs to follow. And it's global in that sense because you do a global project or initiative, but it's local because at the same time, you're actually saying, well, in inclusion, the local aspect matters. And we need you in that office to tell us, what is it that you want to include in your inclusive guide, even if it's the same global language like English, because obviously when you have different languages, Spanish, Portuguese, then that's obvious, right? But you could easily assume, or let's just have all the English-speaking countries with the same guide. And that's not the approach we took, right? So that's just one example. But also, when you think of the other aspects of the clients that we serve, we are a human capital management company. Our products need to be for all type of human beings, right? And you might have someone with a disability, right? Someone with a hearing impediment or with a visual impairment or a neurodiverse condition, right? And in order for us to really serve those clients, we also need to include all our people with those dimensions in the design of our products and our processes. So, internally, we do have our business resource groups, but we also have specific teams and roles and responsibilities that are really looking into this product client-facing practices, along with what we do around our talent practices as well. So, if you digest what that vision means into smaller parts, I would say that we are really constantly just collecting the data using a scientific approach, but at the same time, we're iterating all the time because we know that, making that commitment to an inclusive culture is an always evolving business, right? We're not going to have all the answers right from the beginning, but we are in the business of making it right for our people and for our clients. So, situations where, business resource groups are getting engaged and the different people and the roles that we have are all leaning in to make the inclusive culture of ADP is exactly what we're aiming for.
So Guada, incredible insight. Thank you so much. And one of the things that you had mentioned is our BRGs, known to us inside ADP as business resource groups. And since you're both coming to us from different regions, do you mind leaning in and sharing with us what the BRGs mean in each of your regions and how they support the business? So Guada, we'll start with you and then we'll flip it over to James.
Yes, absolutely. At ADP, we are really tapping on that uniqueness of our associates and the backgrounds and the perspectives that I think that we can all bring. So there are some business resource groups, or you can call it employee resource groups in other companies that are, I think, global in nature. Like, for example, Pride, IWIN, which is for the Women Network. Pride is for the LGBTQ community and allies. Thrive is for disability. And there are some others that are related to a certain race or ethnicity that could be, more prominent in one country or another one, depending on the composition of your associate population, right? So the beauty of the business resource groups infrastructure, I would say, is that we might have a global strategy of what we want to accomplish with having these groups, but at the same time, that local aspect of, okay, what is it that in this particular country is meaningful to accomplish the diversity, equity, and inclusion goals, and how can the business resource group support that? So there is that level of flexibility. So, in here, as an example, here in Spain, we have IWIN, which I mentioned, it's for Women Network and Allies. We also have Pride, we have Thrive, and we're actually going to start having Thrive for Disability. And we also decided that green is something that actually connects us in the international space. So there's even, chapters with multiple countries representation. So, it's a very engaging, I would say, audience, and also people, lean in to get stretch assignments, but also it really helps with understanding what are the business opportunities that we can help ADP with from that represented group, and just making sure that you have your tribe in the company. We just spend too many hours here together, so why not having? And many of us actually have, many business resource groups memberships. So I don't know, James, what is your experience? But certainly that has been a tremendous joy for me.
Absolutely. I like I previously said before, I think the exposure to opportunities as a result of being part of not just I lead the Pride chapter for the UK, Ireland and South Africa, and not just from leading that, but from being part of the other business resource groups that we have here in the UK, Ireland and South Africa. We have Thrive as well. We have iWin. We have Green. We have Military. I'm probably missing some, but we have a real good mixture of business resource groups. And what I love about our leaders of those business resource groups is that we all come together as well to look at where the commonalities are within our business resource groups, and look at ways in which we can be inclusive of absolutely everybody, whether you identify as part of that BRG, or whether you're an ally, or whether you're just curious and want to know more. Everyone is welcome. And we work together to build events and to create spaces for people to kind of build these communities together and really share their stories and really share their passions, so that people, one, are educated and they learn and they become more compassionate, but also as well, just knowing that there are spaces if they ever need them in their life. I'll give you an example. We did an event a couple of months ago in here at ADP, and when we were doing that event, the stall that my Pride stall was next to the Thrive stall. And we got talking, and about a week previous to that event, my brother had just been diagnosed with clinical ADHD. And I just couldn't make the connection with him. I just didn't really understand it. But as I was chatting with someone from Thrive, they were able to tell me their own experience, because they too had been diagnosed about 6 months prior with clinical ADHD. And we had this amazing conversation. And then when I went to see my brother at Christmas, I was just really able to connect with him on the level that he needed me at that point in time to connect with. And what I really understood as well was that even though my brother was going through this, he didn't have that community where he worked. He didn't have that space where he could get people to understand who he was or what he was going through. And I just thought, what a privilege to be able to have associates and friends, an ADP family that can support me through that process, so that I can support someone who's very, very close to me. So I love BRG groups. I think they're the best thing ever.
And if I may add to what James is saying, I have witnessed such a tremendous executive sponsorship, and it's so inspiring. Like, it doesn't really matter if you are an individual contributor just starting your first, part of your work life, or if you are a very seasoned leader. Everyone has, situations like this, experiences like this. And the more open you are, I was sitting on a panel, and I happen to have a husband with, my husband has ADHD, and obviously I got his permission to share this. And I was being interviewed, and I said this, and I said, also, what the journey has been as a spouse. And somebody in the audience then came, after the event and said, "Oh my God, I just got diagnosed. I'm going through this." And, it doesn't matter in what level of the organization you are. And, sitting right next to me was one of our presidents, and he was so open about his situation and, what he was going through as a parent as well. And at the end of the day, we are all human beings, and we're spending a lot of time together. Why wouldn't we be, connect with the whole, bringing your whole self that we talked about earlier, right? Having that tribe and the forums and the events that the business resource groups organize, and understanding also, how can we impact the business because some of the members know a potential prospect that, connects with the representation of that business resource group. So it just, it kind of goes hand in hand with having a business goal and an employee experience and engagement. And it works out, right?
Agree. Totally agree.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. Are there any key points that you want to mention that you think candidates and our listeners would want to know about?
I think for anyone who's looking for a career in, the space of human capital management, or even if you're just looking for a company where you feel that you can start your career or re-energize your career, and you're either scared to do that, or you feel like you are some sort of imposter and you don't belong because of who you are, just try ADP. ADP, really wants you to bring value. They want you to do the best for you, your team, for the whole of ADP. As long as you're a good person at heart, they don't care how you identify, whether it's sexual orientation, gender identification, religion, the color of your skin, any disabilities. We recognize that, the wonderful colors that we have and this palette in this world, are going to make us stronger and better together. And we recognize that we need diversity, and we want those diverse groups to feel included, so then that we can succeed more as a business, because we need different minds, we need different stories, we need different journeys to push us along and to help us be as successful as we possibly can.
And I would echo what James is saying. And my only add to that is it doesn't really matter. Like I said before, if you're an individual contributor, all those things are exceptional benefits that you get. When I joined ADP, I wasn't a leader, and I came for the international experience. And I always say I stay for the inclusion experience. I did not know that I would feel this way, right? Mm-hmm. It wasn't what I joined the company for, but it's what the company gave me throughout the years, through the different stages of my life and my career. Now I'm a leader. And so my additional points to Jane's comments on the leader part is, it is maybe a little bit, more demanding from you to make sure that you're being open, that you are not just well-intended, because typically when you say something out of place or make someone feel uncomfortable due to a diversity dimension, it's typically not because you wanted to hurt someone, right? Yeah. It really is. It was, you were well-intended, but then something didn't go. I can't not tell you enough how great it is to have resources, to have training, to have the tribes we mentioned before, like our BRGs, to support you in that journey. Because I just don't know what I don't know today. I'm hopefully learning, and I'm trying to get better at being more inclusive. But it's just mesmerizing to me to just realize how, just sitting on the back of the event this morning, I was like, oh my God, I'm responsible for inclusion. I'm supposed to be someone educated. I am educated on it. And yet I'm learning so much out of this 30 minutes. So, just having those possibilities to learn as a leader and making sure that you're not just tolerating, but you're actually being inclusive. Yeah. And being inclusive is questioning yourself And at the same time, oftentimes we just need to make a decision. So you can't just, walk around and test your ideas with everyone you can, because you have to make a decision with certain time. But having that opportunity to have all those resources to make more inclusive decisions is really so, so helpful as a leader. So, I'm always just completely inspired, but what I get to learn as a leader, and trying to make sure that the teams that we lead and the people that are looking into us as, what to expect from a leader, they're really seeing that not just intention, but action, right? I really hope that everyone feels and sees what an inclusive culture we have in ADP.
Yeah, agreed.
All of the information that you both have shared with Ingrid and I and our listeners has been, to Guada's point, just very insightful and eye-opening. And, we've learned so much in this time. And one of my key takeaways that both of you alluded to is that you can join ADP at any stage in your life. And we never know what the future holds, but what we do know is that we will go through many different seasons of our life. And during that period of time, our career at ADP. And throughout that time, ADP will also be going through different seasons and we'll be growing together. And reaching out with different resources like our business resource groups and like-minded and not like-minded peers, so we can always evolve, whether it's for ourselves or for loved ones, teammates, direct reports, managers, and of the like. So this was awesome. Ingrid, what are you thinking? I'm sure you're on the other end too, like just nodding your head.
Yeah, listen, I'm always, super, super passionate about diversity, equity, and inclusion subjects. And, this was one of those conversations that is like, yes. Like, I'm happy to know that we are doing really good things outside of, the US. And as a global company that we are, I'm also definitely super inspired with this conversation. And, I want to take this time to thank Guada and James for the contributions to the business. It's super impactful and inspiring. And I am super happy that we had the time to talk and to learn a little bit more about those initiatives around diversity, equity, and inclusion. So thank you both.
All right. So Guada, James, thank you so much for joining us today. Ingrid and I have loved this discussion, have some light bulb moments along the way, and I'm sure our listeners have. So thank you so very much for joining us.
An absolute pleasure. It really was.
My pleasure, Kate, Ingrid. And if you don't mind, I might just say same or something similar in my own language, Spanish. Muchísimas gracias, Kate and Ingrid. He estado muy, muy contenta de estar con vosotros aquí. Hasta luego.